Jonathan with Hartford Baptist, and welcome to James episode. I don't even know what we're 17 or 18. I'm gonna have to look before I post it. But anyways, we're in chapter 5 now, and we see the title is "Warning to the Rich." Before we jump in, thank you for the youth who showed up to the Zoom Bible studies. We continue to work through Acts. But for those not in our youth group, there will be coming to you very shortly Zoom Bible studies as well. If you're not familiar with that, stay tuned. We'll be sending out more detail. Basically, it's you need broadband internet, but it is kind of a video chat, video conferencing for Bible study. And we're going to be doing that for the adults. I believe the days are going to be Thursday. Haven't set the time yet, but probably close to 6:30. And Women of Purpose will also start meeting through Zoom video conferencing. But those are coming your way. Stay tuned for more detail. And there's other things coming as well as we try to minister to each other without being able to congregate. So challenging times, and we're coming up with solutions so we can stay in contact with one another and support each other, pray for each other, and study together. All right, James chapter 5. Warning to the rich. Starting verse 1. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted, your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver have corroded, and their corrosion will be evidence against you, and will eat your flesh like fire. You have laid up treasure in the last days. Behold, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, are crying out against you. And the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. You have lived on the earth in luxury and in self-indulgence. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the righteous person. He does not resist you. James he's pretty tough on wealth right here. Of course, the Bible nowhere links wealth to that wealth is necessarily sinful. In fact, which I really should have looked this up ahead of time, but so I'm kind of guessing here. Proverbs 10:22. Yeah. The blessing of the Lord makes rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. So richness, wealth, is a blessing from the Lord. That's its purpose. That blessing, though, comes with responsibilities. James is addressing those who have failed in their responsibilities. In context, is going to show us this. No, he says, your riches have rotted, your garments are moth-eaten, your gold and silver have corroded. While these are used in our English in the past tense, these aren't necessarily saying it's already happened. James is speaking in the past tense or we'll call it the aorist tense, in a sense of certainty. It's going to happen. We know this. We can't take our gold and silver to the afterlife. We're going to pass, and our gold and silver is going to be left behind, and it's going to corrode. The garments are going to decay. Our wealth is temporary, and that's what James is conveying here. But yet, even with that temporary wealth, what have they done? Right here into verse 3, you have laid up treasures in the last days. The last days, we talked about these yesterday on the Youth Bible Study in Acts. Peter seems to link it very closely with the day of Pentecost, which certainly that's in it. All biblical theologians and commentators, I won't say all, the vast majority, agree that the last days end on Christ's second coming. That's not really debated. But when did the last day start? Well, did it start at the beginning of Jesus' ministry? Is that when they started? Did they start on the cross, at the resurrection, the ascension, or at Pentecost? Not that big of an issue. The last days probably started somewhere between the cross and Pentecost. That 50-something days transition was that transition of the new covenant being fully established. But we don't need to really nail that down to a single day beginning point. It's already begun. That's what's important. We're living in the last days, in between Christ's earthly ministry and between his second coming. So between his first coming and his second coming, we'll say those are the last days, just for simplicity purposes. I know you can debate that a little bit, but So we're in the last days, but these rich people James speaks of, they are hoarding up earthly treasures. That's what they're living their last days for. In today, they're chasing after wealth. Well, what should we be chasing? James doesn't necessarily specifically say at this point. We've seen it earlier in this text. We're going to see it afterwards. We are to chase after God. We are to serve God, love others through our actions, have faith in Him, real faith, faith that obeys in Him. But they are concerned about money, stuff. And that's evident in these next few verses. Behold, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, you've kept back out of fraud. The harvesters, these rich people also, they basically also stole from, committed fraud against. The rich people in James's day is much more. Our American economy, society doesn't even compare. Our middle class, even our lower class, are wealthy by the standard that James seen and James lived in. Our wealth is not even comparable to what even in the Roman Empire had at this day. We just have so much more. But in James's day, very few people had money. Very few people were what we would consider rich. The rest were either working class, farmers fighting for their daily survival, trying to get that next meal to eat, or they were slaves, dependent upon the rich. But that's basically the three classes of citizens. The other than the rich, the bottom two didn't have much money. But the rich were in James' day were prolifically. I don't know if that's the right word to use here, but they were constantly cheating, trying to get more wealth, chasing more wealth, and that's why the laborers never became a true middle class, because they were oppressed by the rich and they could never work their way up. James mentioned earlier they'd be taken to courts. The rich were always trying to get your money. If you started to work ahead, they're just coming for your money. Even in today's society, we seem to see that somewhat. No, you go to college, you get a good education, you get a good job, then the government comes and starts taking your money from your paycheck and taxes and gives themselves raises, like they just voted to do yesterday, and I'm going to vote on again Friday. But you have it to a lesser extent today, where the rich are still taking from the poor, lining their own pockets. It's not as bad in James's day, but this is the charge he's laid out. The rich are not treating their brothers. They're not treating image bearers of God like they should. They're not loving thy neighbor. Verse 5, you have lived in luxury and self-indulgence. You have fattened your hearts in the day of slaughter. This is we'll call this a livestock terminology here. We fatten cows before we slaughter them. Essentially, that's what James is portraying here. You're being fattened up for the day of slaughter. The rich are. And they're going to be judged for how they treat others. What they did with their blessing of wealth, they'll be judged according to. Verse 6, you have condemned and murdered the righteous person. He does not resist you. Well, did the rich really murder? Actually take a knife or a sword and go kill the righteous person? Perhaps. It's possible. James was certainly killed that way by the rich and powerful. But most likely what's talking about here is starvation. It's extreme poverty. Poverty kills. We know that. Not so much in this nation, but in Africa, Ethiopia for I don't even know how many decades or centuries now have struggled with poverty and starvation. That was one of the number one killers. One of the top killers of James's day was not having enough food, malnutrition. And he's accused the rich of murder by allowing that to happen. For our context today, with all the wealth that we have, and we do have wealth in America, even if you think you're poor by American standards, you may be poor by American standards. You are wealthy compared to world standards. What are we doing with that blessing? Do we share it with others? Even locally or foreign. I know there's some at Hartford Baptist who love to give to foreign missions. That's great. That's using your blessing to bless others. Fantastic. Some others like to volunteer their time and money and buy cleaning products and everything for local missions or local food pantries. Also, fantastic. Showing your brother love. You are doing something with your blessings. But kind of reflect on yourself. Are we doing what others do at the church? Are we using our blessings to bless others, or are we hoarding it up? If we're hoarding it up, why? Can't take it with us. That's certainly not Christian behavior. We're not loving our brothers, not loving our sisters as we should. Hoarding does not accomplish that. Greed doesn't accomplish that. So just kind of ask, like, what can I do in the future to better use my blessings? What can I use? God has given me. It may just be a little wealth, but you've got some. Are you using it appropriately? That's a question only you can answer. Are you using it appropriately? And just kind of think on that. And I'll leave you with that. And next time we're going to talk about patience and suffering, which that's a tough one. But until then, God bless.